Welcome to the Big Fellas Podcast, where we chop it up about all things past, present, and future about the game of basketball. Where facts, stats, and context reign supreme.
That is blasphemous!
Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. Get ready to learn from players, coaches, and fans from all levels of the game and see the court in a brand new way. And now, fresh off the sidelines, here's your host, John Hartofilis.
What it do, fellas, and welcome to the Big Fellas Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, JH, coming to you from New York City, the mecca of basketball. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Tas Melas, NBA personality at The Athletic and co-host of the No Dunks podcast. We spoke about what it was like co-hosting the starters on NBA TV, his predictions on the upcoming 2021 NBA season, and the evolution of a day one Raptors fan. We've got a good one in store for you today, fellas. Episode number 40, Tas Melas, NBA personality. Hey, Tas. Thanks so much for coming on.
I appreciate it, John. I'm happy to be on. There's a long list of great guests you've had on, so I'm glad to join the ranks.
You're definitely high up there in the ranks, and I'm really excited for this episode. Just to get us started, you and your college buddies were working in a college radio station and ended up turning it into one of the biggest TV shows on NBA TV. What did that kind of look like for you?
Well, yeah, we just wanted to do something coming out of college. We just felt like our day jobs weren't cutting it, so we got together and we're thinking about what we wanted to do. A couple of us had a background in sports. Our producer did not, but luckily he knew what podcasts were back in 2005. So he said, why don't we start a podcast? You guys love sports, specifically basketball. Do you guys want to talk about sports on a podcast? And we said, well, what the heck is a podcast? And from there, we decided just to go strictly basketball because we were in love with the Raptors back then and loved ball in general. And just took it really seriously because our background is radio and television, and our producer made it sound incredible way back then. And, you know, we went from audio to video to having opportunities in Canada at the Score. And then that connection with NBA TV from the Score led us to Atlanta in Turner Studios for 6 years. And now we're back producing strictly a podcast after doing the TV thing with them for a long period of time. And it's a long ride, but it just started with burying our heads down for a little bit. Didn't have much of a plan, but luckily it kind of all panned out.
Oh, definitely. And it's super cool, that whole story of you guys all doing it together. How important is that chemistry that you guys have together, that you guys have been doing this for so many years?
Yeah, it's really important. And also a huge part of being decent at what we are right now is that we had a lot of reps on air while no one was listening. And I think we started in sort of the non-traditional format, like you're doing yourself in a podcast format. And we weren't just growing up in sort of the TV, the TV environment. So we were ourselves, you know, we didn't grow up all kind of stuffy wearing suits. We had a lot of reps just kind of shooting the breeze, being friends on camera and on air. And we haven't changed that. And that's something that I think not being in the TV world really helped us be. And also you mentioned just being with friends and the chemistry part. It's so important to have. For me, I'm not that self-motivated, not like you, John, where I would get up and record myself day after day after day after day after day if I didn't have other guys pushing me. And then that's sort of a personal thing, but just that, not just pushing me. I mean, I push myself, but we were dependent on each other to make that final product. And so we were there at, you know, whether it was 6 a.m. when we were recording on Skype or in person, we just, you know, had to depend on each other, and we were definitely ourselves, and podcasting allows for that. And there's lots of stupid episodes where we were, you know, silly and goofed off, but that's why people like us, because we were ourselves.
Of course, and it's so important to be yourselves. What was the transition like then from when you guys just shooting the breeze talking about sports to then having a TV show on NBA TV where you're having NBA players come on and it's taking that little turn? That's obviously a huge jump. What was that like for you being behind it?
Yeah, it was, there's some hiccups, you know. It was the bright lights, a big studio, big, you know, huge cavernous studio where we weren't ourselves at the beginning. And it took a long time, just like anything. It took long hours to get to where we're kind of, you know, chilling out and relaxed with guests and all that. But, you know, we just got reps in there as well. We did a lot of all-star weekends. Even when we didn't have credentials, we were down there trying to get interviews with players. And I think being at all-star weekends where players, they kind of want to relax when they get off the grind of the first half of the season. They kind of want to chill out a little bit, and they are themselves. And they really took to us asking silly questions like, what would you name your cologne? That kind of thing, those really silly questions, and they loved it. And so I think that kind of broke the ice, not only for them to be themselves and not have to answer strictly basketball questions, but for us too. We started to see that, hey, these players are great personalities and have a lot to offer other than X's and O's, and we tried to keep it professional and also have some fun at the same time. So to answer your question, it was reps and just understanding that we belong there at NBA TV, and it was tough. And we look back at our first years in 2013 and look at it and laugh, and it was bad. There was we took chances, we did dumb things. We brought a Pelican on air our first week, and that was us though. We did take chances, and NBA TV did allow us to be ourselves and let us do our thing and be bad at first, and then it picked up and people started to respect it. And as you said, we were one of the good TV shows on NBA TV by the end of it, and people respected not only our basketball knowledge, but the fact that we like to have fun because this is a sport, and our chemistry with players and all that. So it was growing pains. Yeah, it was bad. I don't know why we brought a Pelican on air that first week, but we'll always remember that.
All these years later, you're still going to be talking about it, and being able to have that fun is great. And you even told me off air is be yourself, and that's great advice that I'm for sure going to take with me from this episode. So on that same note of having fun with it, the daily podcast you're doing now, No Dunks, is kind of back into that style you guys were more used to. How did you guys come up with that name? It's a fun name. What did you think of that?
That's a good question. Coming up with names is so hard, John. From the Basketball Jones to the starters, we had the free agents for a little bit. There was a reason for that because we were free agents, but to No Dunks, it's always so tough. You can look at it a lot of ways. We've never ever dunked a basketball, and none of us have ever gotten up and been able to actually dunk a basketball. Tennis balls may have touched the rim, but that's about it. We also like the fundamentals of the game, moving the ball a lot. And so, you can look at it different ways. Also, we like block shots. We also like wedgies. So, it all kind of blends into No Dunks, which, as I've said, I don't even know the meaning, really. I mean, we just kind of were throwing things at the wall, throw things in a Google Doc, and you kind of go and filter through them. And again, man, it's hard. You want something short, I think, these days. And it worked out, and it looks great. The Athletic did a good job of making our logo. So yeah, everybody's happy, and we make the name. You make the name what it is. So we've gone through a lot of names. The A team, the B team, the C team, and tried a lot of different things. But so far, so good with this one. We like this one.
Your career so far is so interesting. I'm kind of curious if you take it back a little bit to being a Raptors fan. What's that evolution been like for you, going from the Vince Carter era to Chris Bosh, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi, to now this new young team that they throw a boxing one in the finals in there sometimes. Siakam's a budding superstar.
Well, it's a real roller coaster, honestly, because I became a fan, like a super fan, when I bought season seats, because Vince Carter made me buy season seats with buddies where we split a season ticket package. I basically had one seat for 10 games back in 2001 when Vince and Iverson were going up against each other in the playoffs. I was in college then, and I splurged with buddies of mine because we had watched what was a Mickey Mouse franchise at the beginning. That's the way a lot of NBA players looked at it from 95 to 2000 or so. And they didn't really solidify their ways until new management came in, and Vince Carter was also a huge part of that. And so there was that rise. When you talk about a roller coaster, man, we were rising then. It felt good as a Raptors fan. It looked really, really good. And then, there was some bad, dark years where my friends and I, year after year, we'd walk out of that arena and we'd say, are we going to keep buying season seats here? It just, things aren't coming together on the floor. It doesn't seem like things are working. Chris Bosh obviously came along. Some great personalities, and Jose Calderon and Morris Peterson, but there wasn't a lot of winning, and things didn't go well. Jorge Garbajosa's injury prevented a playoff victory against the New Jersey Nets back in 07. They would have won that series if he was healthy. It's an evolution. I call it a roller coaster because to look at it, you mentioned those things there with Lowry and DeRozan and Masai Ujiri, the stability that they've had and hosting an all-star game, and the way they look now as a real A-list professional franchise. I shouldn't say look, the way they operate, the way they are, the way they're perceived. It's almost unfathomable when you look back and when I was a kid watching them in the Dino uniforms in the Sky Dome as a baseball stadium. It just didn't seem like they'd ever reach sort of the pinnacle. And it took a really long time, and there was worries that they'd kind of go the way of the Vancouver Grizzlies and just disappear or go south of the border. And it's astonishing when you look back. They needed time to get their reps in and to get strong management in there. And now, they're one of the elite teams. And so people in the NBA world also understand that it's a special city and an elite city, a world-class city to be and to live in. Because back when I was growing up and a huge fan, guys didn't want to play there. I remember Antonio Davis, who ended up being an all-star with the Toronto Raptors, but he said, I don't want my kids looking at a speed sign or a speed limit sign saying 50 kilometers an hour. Like, I don't want that. I don't want like they just were unaware that this is an incredible place to live. And there was obviously great players who understood that it was a special city, but there was reluctance. And now looking back, it just doesn't seem real that they would get to where they are right now. So it's a pretty cool ride, having been there from day one as a real fan, and now seeing where they are and being on top of the world in year 24 when they won the championship after 24 seasons. It's incredible. It's a lot of hours for, from Brendan Malone to Darryl Walker to guys that are sort of lost in history in terms of their coaching and their front office to where they are now. And a lot of great players have come through there, but it's also fun to look at the guys that didn't play very long for them. And there's a commercial in Canada of all the players kind of spliced together, like Eric Montross and Derek Dial, and guys that didn't play a long time. So there's been a lot of players, been a lot of downs, as I said, but they've come a long way. You asked me that question, John. You asked me that question, man. I could go on for years talking about the Raptors history, because it's a huge part of my life and why I'm definitely doing what I'm doing because of Vince and how he was such a special guy, and he took obviously Canada by storm, but also the NBA and the world. So he sucked me in, that's for sure, because I was growing up more of a baseball, hockey loving kid in Canada, and then when the Raptors came around and the baseball strike happened, I got sucked in big time to basketball, and Vince was a part of that. I'm happy for him, or that he's retired, and what the career that he put together, and I'm really happy that we got to talk to him a couple times on the starters as well.
Going from a Mickey Mouse franchise, like you had said, to now an A-list organization in the NBA is obviously a huge thing. And to have seen that must have been great. What was the conversation like between you and your buddies walking out of Game 6 after winning the championship compared to the one a few years earlier when it was why we were still buying season tickets? What was the difference?
Not a lot of words, just jaw dropping, just a jaw dropping moment. We're just in awe of what happened there and how it all came together, and how they had a special locker room and a special coach. And we were at Game 5 working in Toronto when they're up 6, a couple minutes left, and it looked like they could win it 4-1. And Nick Nurse called a timeout, and things just went south, and they lost that game. And it almost didn't feel like they deserved to win that game because of it was just an ugly game, and it was just one of those ugly playoff games where they could have found a way to win, and obviously the city would have gone crazy. I'm not sure if I'd be alive to tell it if we were celebrating that night, but they went and won in obviously in California in Game 6. I don't know. I kind of like the fact that they won 3 games on the road that series, dominating every single time they stepped into that arena, and didn't let Golden State win at home. So it was just, again, I still get chills. It's just more, no real conversations were had. It's just being, God, it was, being in that moment and enjoying it, and feeling, as I mentioned, all the players before them, like even DeMar DeRozan, who was a lifer there, and Morris Peterson, who put so much time in there, and a guy like Jose Calderon, feeling good for them and feeling good for all of the history of the Toronto Raptors, from the front office down to the crazy fan base that just was so desperate for a freaking playoff game. And now for them to win it, obviously extremely, extremely special, and really meant a lot.
Of course. And then in terms of where do you kind of see the Raptors, like what's their next step? Because they were legitimate contenders and they still are, but there's other teams like the Lakers that are making huge moves over the offseason. Do you think the Raptors need something like a blockbuster Kawhi trade that they pulled off 2 years ago where they really go all in? What do you see them doing?
Yeah, it's a good question, because, for the year last year, it was obviously a great accomplishment to get to where they were. The second round loss was a bit of a disappointment, and other teams like the Heat and the Celtics, even in the Eastern Conference, making moves while Raptors lost their 2 centers. I think that being in this position just feels a little bit odd, because it kind of feels like they've plateaued a little bit. But I think what they're thinking about is Pascal Siakam taking that next step within their organization. Of course, they're always looking to improve their team on the outside, as you mentioned, or from the outside, as you mentioned, whether it be a trade or the offseason of 2021, where some big name free agents are available. But they just hope that Pascal Siakam's performance in the bubble was just an anomaly, and that he'll be better, and that it was just the conditions and the circumstances there, because Pascal didn't perform to his capabilities, and it was his first playoffs as a number 1 guy. And I think that's what they're looking at. They're just, of course, always want to improve their team, but they're looking at their guy and they're saying, hey, you can be better than that. And I think he is looking at himself to be better than that. And I'm sure he's working on it. So I think that's the piece in their locker room that can propel them to the next level. And you mentioned the Lakers and everybody in the Western Conference. They're probably still the favorites over any team in the Eastern Conference. But I think the East is kind of open for a Raptors team to still jump up and grab it if Pascal Siakam can grow a little bit this season. There'll be some great battles. I think the Nets, Celtics, Heat, even the Sixers, the Bucks, of course. It's kind of wide open, so it's going to be real fun in both conferences. Starting December 22nd, man.
22nd, 3 weeks. Yep,
3 weeks today, right?
That got me thinking though. Who's your favorite Raptor of all time?
Ooh, it's a tough question. As far as like the guy that meant the most to me was probably Vince Carter, just because he really got me into the arena, when I was 20 years old, and I bought those season seats with friends. But as far as sort of a guy that I've kind of attached to, I think forward Jorge Garbajosa, who didn't play real long with the Toronto Raptors, had a real short run there. But kind of embodied the city in that he was a tough SOB. He broke his leg on the floor. Didn't even seem like he was injured at all. There are rumors that he watched part of his surgery and he was awake for it. He was there in the hallway, in the locker room, always ready to give his friends a cigarette. Like he's just a great guy. And Toronto really loves their workman-like players, like a lot of cities and their sports teams. They absolutely loved Matt Bonner because he shoved Kevin Garnett in his rookie season. We love the tough guys, and Jorge Garbajosa was definitely a tough guy, and he was a glue guy. There's no doubt about that. But he's obviously a really skilled guy, and his career was cut short. So Man, I mentioned Jose Calderon and Morris Peterson and Vince. Alvin Williams is probably another guy that gets lost to history a little bit, but he's kind of in that Jorge Garbajosa role or mold. He hit the biggest shot in Raptors history for a long time when they won the 2001 first round series against the New York Knicks. It was their only playoff series win for a long time until just a few years ago. So that shot in Madison Square Garden gets it from VC, huge fist pump after hitting that elbow jumper. That was a huge shot, and it kind of gets forgotten now. But yeah, him then was definitely my guy, and Jorge Garbajosa kind of fits that same type of, not a superstar, and maybe John, I'm kind of looking at projecting myself. Like I was never a star athlete, but I was a guy that could get the whatever. I'm not even going to talk about my athletic career, but like I was a guy that was just decent and could do a little bit of stuff on the floor or the field or whatever. So maybe I don't look at the superstars and envy them. Maybe I'm more of I love Wesley Matthews' game. I love guys that do the dirty work and still can be champs. So those are a few of the names that come to mind.
It's great to hear about players that most fans really wouldn't even know from Raptors history. That you say those names, and most guys would be like, "How?" Or people my age would be like, "Who are you talking about?"
Yeah,
But
Alvin
the
Williams,
fact that,
Villanova. Jorge
yep,
Garbajosa from Spain. Now he's the head of the Spanish Basketball Federation. I got to meet him too. So yeah, dudes like they don't get, like you said, they don't get a lot of the headlines. People don't know them now, but they help you win, and they help get a team gelled together, and you desperately need them. I think besides Vince, Alvin was the steadiest player back then, even if he wasn't close to an all-star, and Antonio Davis became an all-star. You got me talking about old Raptors now, John, man. I can go on and on and on, but yeah, those are some of the dudes that resonated with me sitting up there in the nosebleeds. I just wanted guys to give it their all on both ends, and Alvin Williams probably gave it a little too much, and his career was cut short by a knee injury. And same with Jorge Garbajosa with that broken leg. So those dudes laid it on the line, and that's why I guess they hold a place in my heart too.
great to think of the impact those players had on you. Kind of going back to that topic of free agency, though, one of the biggest things that's obviously the league's waiting on is, will Giannis sign the Supermax? Means so much in terms of maybe some other superstars' decision on what they're going to do and if they're going to sign long-term or take one-year deals. What are you kind of expecting to see happen? And also, what do you see the ripple effects being?
Well, it's funny you asked that, because last night I was reading an article in Greek. I was reading a Greek article about the writer believes Giannis is going to sign that Supermax extension. And I've kind of gone back and forth on this, but now I'm in the same camp with that writer. I was using Google Translate a lot to make sure I was reading what I was reading correctly. And I'm with him. I think that it's going to happen, especially in today's NBA. Even if you put your pen to the paper, if you're a star, you can force your way out of that city if you have to down the road. So I think Giannis takes the dollars, and he's loyal, and he wants Milwaukee to be a championship team. That's a huge part of why he would sign the deal. And it sure feels like he's on his way back from Greece. I think he's back now, and I would assume he's going to put his pen to the paper. And Milwaukee is doing everything they can to try and make a good team around him. And I think what gets lost in their offseason is the whole ordeal with Bogdan Bogdanovic. People thought Bogey was going to be with the Milwaukee Bucks, and they had a couple blunders with the front office and some contract details. So people forget that they are better on the floor this year. Giannis has a better team going into the regular season and definitely into the playoffs, because besides him, Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez, they didn't know who they were playing at the end of games last year. Now they know Drew Holiday is going to be a ball handler on that team in the last few minutes of a game in crunch time, and they needed that desperately. And so they're better. And I think DJ Augustine's going to help a good amount, and he'll probably be on the floor late. They have other options now. Wesley Matthews probably should have played last year. Now I'm going to criticize Coach Bud, but I think Giannis is going to put the pen to the paper and then see down the road if the Bucks front office continues to make these moves, because I think they if you zoom out and you don't look at the little blunders, I think Giannis knows deep down that this is a good team now. I mean, obviously it was a good team last year, but it's an improved team and they have a shot here. And the Bucks are showing that they're willing to make this team better. And I think he's going to be off the board coming pretty soon before the season as the deadline approaches for him to sign that Supermax extension.
One thing I thought was interesting was a couple years ago when you had called Giannis the most overrated player in the league, and he went on the show with his most improved player award and said, first of all, I want to thank Tas Melas for hating on me. What was that whole exchange like? I thought that was hilarious, and thinking about it was really funny. What was that like?
It was hilarious. Yeah, he's obviously a great sport. Yeah, I think now looking back and if you say, well, this broadcaster, this guy called Giannis Antetokounmpo, the two-time MVP, overrated. I never called him overrated in this last stretch of his career. After his second season, when he averaged, I think it was 12 or 13 points. This was the offseason in 2015. I said to people that he hadn't reached the level that everyone sort of expected him to, or everyone was already projecting him to be an incredible player, because obviously he had the tools to be that great. I was just trying to make people understand he wasn't there quite yet. And he was an incredible sport because he also, he online, he said, whoa, this guy's calling me overrated. He commented on it. And then there was even a time where somebody asked me on Twitter, is Giannis Antetokounmpo the best Greek basketball player ever? And I said, in the NBA, sure, but Nikos Galis is the best Greek basketball player ever. And he retweeted that with motivation. So he's just a good sport. He's looking for things to get him fired up, and he didn't give a crap that I called him overrated. He came on, accepted the award, and had some fun with it because he's a good guy. And we sent the Bucks the award. He was happy to go on camera and stick it to me, and that felt good. It felt good that for him, obviously that was most improved back then, and now to see where he's at. That clip of me calling him overrated back in 2015 will be played on loop forever by someone, I'm sure. Like, I get him reminded about that every once in a while by a fan calling me stupid. So it's I almost regret it, because it's something that again will be shoved in my face, but I don't regret it because I was right at the time. People thought he was already an all-star at the time, but it's fine. It's just it's good to have that recorded moment on video of me saying that.
And I'd imagine he'll bring it up all the time. But what are some of the takes that you're really proud of? Maybe that might be a low light, but what are some of the highlights where it really, where you've had tapes that you're really proud of and look back on?
The one that stands out is the Clippers struggling, through their tenure under Donald Sterling, just being a bad team for a really long time. They had a first round series against the San Antonio Spurs years ago in the Lob City era with Blake and Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan. And no one expected them to win. And all the pundits, all the experts were picking the Spurs to win. I picked the Clippers to win in 7 games, and they did. And after the series, it came out that Doc Rivers had posted in the locker room all of the experts' picks, every single one from ESPN, Spurs in 5, Spurs in 6, Spurs in 7. But there was one guy on that thing that he pasted there that said Clippers in 7. That was me. And so every squirrel finds a nut. And so I made a good prediction that day. And it was cool that Doc used that as motivation for his team. And it was good for them. They won. So way more bad predictions, John, than good ones. But that one came through, and it was cool to see it afterwards. I got to be honest. I do take this thing seriously, even though it's a game. I do, as a sports broadcaster, I'm not just throwing things at the wall here. I'm actually trying to think things through. And that one, I would have been disappointed if the Clippers couldn't beat the Spurs that series. That was their time to win. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for them because they're up 3-1 against the Rockets in the next series. And then the Josh Smith and Corey Brewer bombs were raining down and they lost in 7 games in that one. But that was their series that season to turn it around. And at least they won that first round series against the Spurs, who I understand why everybody picked the Spurs because they are the Spurs. But the Clippers, yeah, it was good to see them win something.
On that note of takes, what are your predictions for this upcoming season?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the Eastern Conference. The West, those Clippers, I am interested to see them have a full season with everybody in the locker room and Ty Lue at the helm, because I think last season would have been different if the Clippers had March and April to play through together as a squad. I think the hiatus hurt them the most out of any team because they didn't have a history together and because they didn't have a lot of games played together. I think Paul George and Kawhi Leonard had played 32 games together going into the bubble. And I'm looking forward to seeing them play together in that Western Conference that's super loaded. The Lakers are obviously the favorites, but I'm looking forward to the Nuggets to see if Michael Porter Jr. can take a next step. There's a bunch of teams in the West with the Blazers, even the Jazz, obviously down even the Suns, the Wolves, to see what they can do with their young guys. So there's a lot of teams in the Western Conference. I mentioned a bunch of teams in the East. There's just so many teams that can be really, really good. This happened to me last season where I started to think, whoa, there's legitimately 9 or 10 teams that can win the championship, which sounds a little nuts now looking back, because I can get reeled in. I can get reeled into saying, oh, the Rockets, there's a chance, it's an outside chance. But if things work out, then they're one of the many teams that can win it. So I'm in that mode again. I'm looking forward to seeing which teams are for real, and the 72 games. It's not quite like the bubble where it's going to go that fast, but the 72 games are going to go fast because there's going to be games canceled. There is everything going on outside this NBA world that is going to impact the way the schedule breaks down. So such a quick camp. We're talking right now here on December 1st, and they're going to be playing in 3 weeks. So this really favors the teams that have a bit of history together, and it favors the teams that are going to get off to a good start. And so there's a lot of variables, as you said. There's a lot going on. So it'll be fun to cover because there's going to be a lot of zigging and zagging, a lot of hiccups for these teams. If somebody contracts the virus, if they have to cancel a game, if for whatever reason, they have to sit out weeks, who knows? So there's lots to chew on, and there's so much player movement that happened in such a short period of time. It's also hard to keep track of where everybody is. So there's again, I'm buying. I don't know how many teams you think can actually win this thing, but I think there's a lot of teams. Maybe it's I still got the bubble on my mind where I think a lot of teams can overcome the odds here and get to the NBA Finals like the Heat did.
Definitely can't wait to see what happens in just a few short weeks with basketball coming back. And Taz, just real quick, one last question in terms of obviously, like you're working on No Dunks now, and that's going really well. What do you kind of see coming up for you? Are you going to continue with No Dunks as your main thing? Are there other things you're looking at in terms of TV, video stuff? What are you looking at?
Well, No Dunks definitely the main thing, and I was lucky enough to work at NBA TV last year, doing a couple different shows on air. One with Channing Frye called Handles, which was kind of a wrap-up show of the night of the NBA world. And so always looking to do some television on the side. It's a great skill to keep up, and it's fun to do. So really, besides that, just trying to stay busy and hopefully other opportunities come up, but also just trying to stay healthy. So those are the objectives, just trying to keep it up. This NBA, because No Dunks and the NBA season is coming up so fast, that's going to occupy a lot of time. I always dig into the NBA season. It's just, I've been doing it for so long. I just dive in, and it's like a full-time love affair with the NBA of just watching so many games and watching so much ball and trying to dissect and take it all in. Because I mentioned, even down the standings, like the Suns and the Wolves. There's so many teams that are really going for it, especially with the format that the NBA has going on, that they've got these play-in games. 20 teams will make the quote-unquote playoffs, right? So there's only a few teams that look like they're out of it already. So there's legitimately like 27 teams that are going to be really fun to watch. So that's what I'm going to be doing, John. I'm just going to be watching ball. It's a great excuse when we're home right now to just be tuning into every single minute of every single game. So I appreciate the question. I'll be watching ball. You can catch me online tweeting away and trying to take it all in.
Sure. I'm going to add a third one to that. Stay busy, stay healthy, watch ball. Definitely how to do it. But Taz, thank you so much for coming on. This episode was fantastic. I had fun and learned so much. And really, it's always fun to talk hoops, going back and forth. So thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime, John. Best of luck and keep up the good work, man. Keep it up.
Thanks for listening to the Big Fellas Podcast. Check us out on all major social media platforms at Big Fellas Pod to join the chop up. You can also listen to us on every podcast platform on the planet. Stay tuned for the next episode, Big Fellas.